so this is the second webinar, and it is titled Level Up Public Transport for Healthier and More Sustainable Cities in Europe with Upper Tools and Resources. So as the title says, this is organized in collaboration with the Upper Project, which aims at increasing public transport ridership and improving public transport user satisfaction. So just before I start the introduction, a few rules to make sure that this webinar runs smoothly. So the meeting is being recorded, as you heard in the very beginning. Then I will ask the speakers to keep your microphone closed when you are not speaking in order to avoid disturbing the person who's speaking. And I will ask the audience to ask the brief questions in the Q&A tab so that I can pick up on the questions during the Q&A session that will take place after the presentations of Raquel, Julia, Esther, and Eli. So I hope this is all clear, and now I'll just go on with the introduction. So public transport is a strategic topic for Polis because it is the backbone of urban mobility, and we are working on urban mobility innovations. But we need to think of new ways to define public transport because thanks to innovations and evolving society and practices, the purpose of public transport is also evolving. And the definition of public transport throughout several EU policy agenda files will determine its success. So, for example, for the Social Climate Fund, the definition of public transport will also channel the funding options towards public transport. In the Fit for 55 package, the definition of public transport will also define how it can be funded through vehicle procurement, but also for recharging, refueling, and manufacturing channels. Also in the multimodal digital mobility services legislation, the way public transport is defined is very important. And of course, in the sustainable urban mobility planning obligations, we have to ensure that public transport remains the backbone and the center of urban mobility. The old models of public transport, which is only bus, tram, metro, etc., do not represent the whole of the paradigm currently. And it is very important to adapt and think of how public transport is defined. So the definition of public transport also highlights the questions that require an answer. What are the challenges for public transport currently in the current society? How should public transport evolve to meet these challenges? And what can be done at the European level? So Polis is working on, through several ways to ensure that the objectives of public transport are fulfilled. We have launched a letter with other stakeholders towards the new European Parliament to ask for prioritization of public transport as a sector in their upcoming activities. So this is the letter that you can see on the right here. We are also part of a process under the expert group on urban mobility to write recommendations on public transport under the leadership of Françoise Gaspard from Île-de-France Mobility, Île-de-France Europe. And we are also involved in two strategic projects under Horizon Europe, EBRT 2030, that was the topic of the previous webinar of the Public Transport Lab, and the Upper Project that you will hear more about in this webinar. And all of these activities are framed in the Access Working Group of Polis, which is led by Melina, our dear colleague, which you can see here on the right. So this is just a short introduction to show that this webinar is part of a bigger process and that there were activities before that you can get informed on, and there will be activities afterwards that we are very happy for you, stakeholders, to get involved in, because collaboration is key to ensure that the definition and the role of public transport is fulfilled in the next years and also taken into consideration by the decision makers. So we had a public transport lab in 2021. That was the first one. And you will have the link to all of the webinars of this series in the slides that will be published on the Polis website after this webinar. And this is the second public transport lab, which had a first webinar on November 18, focusing on bus rapid transit and featuring Polis members Barcelona and Catalonia. We are now on the second webinar, co-organized with Upper and featuring the policy members Budapest and Leuven. And the next webinar will be on 27th of January, featuring the projects Show, Augmented CCAM and Mobilities for EU, and showcasing policy members EMT Madrid and Dresden. After that, there will be a webinar on 18th of February, featuring the EU project SUM and showcasing the cities Athens, Penteli, Larnaca, and Krakow. And there will be a last webinar a bit later in February, which details will be confirmed a bit later on. So yeah, this is it for the overall context of this webinar. And now the agenda of today's webinar. So I started with the introduction, then we will have a presentation of the Upper project by the project technical coordinator, Raquel Alario from ETRA. After that, we will have two presentations by Budapest and Leuven on how Upper contributes to their public transport strategy and to improving their public transport systems. After that, we will have a Q&A session where I will pick up on the questions that you will have asked in the Q&A tab on Zoom in this great function. And then we will have a short presentation by my colleague Laura Babio from Polis about the legacy of the Upper project, and especially focusing on the knowledge produced within the project. And I will wrap up and conclude on this webinar. Okay, I hope this is all clear. And I will now leave the floor to our first great panelist, Raquel. Raquel, I think you want to share your screen, right? Then I will just stop sharing myself.
Okay, is it okay? Can you see properly the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Raquel Alario. I work for ETRA, and we are the technical coordinators of the Upper project. So we will quickly go through the Upper project, what is this about, and how we give support to the European cities and regions in improving the public transport. So I will start giving like a really quick overview and context of the project. So in Upper, we have a really clear goal, and we want to help the cities in achieving the famous climate neutrality by 2050. And well, we want to do so by reducing the emissions by 55% in 2030. But of course, for reaching this ambitious goal, Upper is willing to drive a change, let's say, in the citizens' mobility patterns, and we want to increase the public transport uptake by 30%, which is quite an ambitious goal. But not only that, we also want to improve the user satisfaction of the people using the public transport by over 25%. So in short, our goals are really, really ambitious. But the good point is that the cities have a great opportunity to reach these goals. And what we are going to do is to transform the public transport into the backbone of the sustainable urban mobility. And the Upper project is especially focused on doing that. So the goal is clear, the opportunity as well, and the strategy is quite simple, but we think it's effective. We are going to implement measures that will push the people from their private vehicles and will pull the people towards the public transport. So translated into specific actions, the Upper project is going to implement in 10 cities and regions a total amount of 78 push and pull measures that will improve the public transport and will promote the use of sustainable transport options. So as I have said, Upper will work in making the public transport the core of the urban mobility in 10 cities and regions. 5 of them will be the mainly built labs, which is the case of Valencia, Rome, Oslo, Mannheim, and Ile-de-France. And then we'll have 5 training sites that will implement their own measures, but will also closely follow up the work that is being done in the mainly labs. And this is the case of Thessaloniki, Leuven, Budapest, Lisbon, and Hanover region. And fortunately, today we'll have 2 of these training sites here in the webinar presenting their insights from their measures, which is the case of Budapest and Leuven. Well, so as previously said, the project wants to achieve really ambitious goals, by implementing 78 innovative measures that will increase the use of public transport and the satisfaction with these transport modes. Part of these measures will be designed to push people from the private vehicles, so to discourage the use of private car. And then there will be a group of measures aimed at pulling people toward the public transport. So to make it more attractive, more appealing, and a really interesting and convenient option. So these measures will improve the public transport from multiple angles, like the reliability, the efficiency, the resilience in case of disruptive events, the accessibility for all the users. And this is one of the core components of the APPER project, because we are aligned with the concept of mobility as a right. Public transport should be for all. Also, we will improve the comfort, safety, not only before, but also during the trip, the perception of the quality of service, and the seamless integration with other active and sustainable modes. Our group of measures will innovate on different axes, on 5 main pillars. So just to give 2 examples, the road network management. So we will explore innovative ways on how to manage the road network, for example, through the public transport prioritization. And in case of the urban mobility planning, we will investigate different ways of identifying inefficiencies in the public transport network and improving the public transport planning. So, well, to make it more tangible for the people attending the webinar, so to give examples on which type of measures are we implementing, what we have done is to group these 78 measures into a set of categories. So we'll have measures that are dealing with the redistribution of the urban space. So to make the public space really public transport centric and people centric instead of private vehicle centric. Then they will have measures that are focused on making the public transport stops safer, more accessible to all the users, and to improve the experience during the waiting time. Then we have also measures that will be upgrading, developing new functionalities for their mobility as a service. So to improve the digital integration of multiple transport services. This goes from the integration of the ticketing system to the improvement of the route planners. We have also as well measures focus on UBARs or limiting the access, for example, to low emission zones to the private vehicles and so on. Others that will give priority to the public transport to reduce the travel times, to make it more resilient, and so on. Then, we have a lot of measures. We have also measures focused on the on-demand mobility services to cover areas of low demand. Others measures giving incentives to the use of public transport, some campaigns for targeted groups, and so on. So these are type of measures that we are developing within this project. But, well, as you may imagine, the implementation of this type of measure is not an easy task, especially for the cities and regions. It's really challenging. So this is why the APPER project is closely following up the entire process together with the cities and the regions, and we are giving support in each step of the process. So from the design of the measures until the implementation, the evaluation, and in case of success, the replication, scalability, and so on. So it's like giving support through the entire life cycle. So now we are in month 18 of the project, 1.5 years. And so far, the APPER project has given support to the cities and regions in many different ways. So going from co-creation sessions, thematic workshops, even we are developing a support toolkit to give an extra help to the cities and so on. But I will go one by one to better explain the type of support. So I started from the very beginning. One of the first actions that we did in the APPER project, we carry out a really in-depth public transport diagnosis from 2 different perspectives: the user's needs and the local public transport ecosystem. So starting from the first one, we carry out a really in-depth user research that combine qualitative methods like the ethnography, the Delphi surveys, experience notebook, and we also did a large-scale survey across 9 countries with more than 2,500 participants. And this this big analysis help us identifying which are the user needs, the motivations, the patterns, and all that information collected for our Living Lives and Twin Insights is published into the website, into the Upper Project website. So in case you want to take it, just feel free. And regarding the local public transport ecosystem, we also did some surveys and interviews with the local transport authorities, mobility providers, stakeholders, well, throughout the 10 cities to really understand which are the mobility systems, how are they making decisions, if their measures were properly aligned with their local SAMs, and so on. And the result of all this analysis was the creation of a SWOT analysis per city, where we identify which were the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of the public transport. So this was really essential for the cities for tailoring their measures. Then about the measures fine-tuning and the identification of requirements. I mean, one of the first steps if you want to implement a successful measure is to clearly define which are the objectives, the outcomes, the area of influence, the expected impact, the target users. Everything is to be clear before I start the implementation of a measure. So we gave support to the cities in identifying these things and also in defining requirements for their measures. Software requirements, hardware requirements, legal, even data requirements. So to be sure that everything was in place to ensure the successful implementation of the measure. Then the serious game, that's a good one, interesting one. In our project, we use this serious game as an innovative way to identify which are the needs, especially from vulnerable users, to co-create innovative solutions for all. I mean, the public transport should be not only for a certain group of users, it should be for all. And sometimes the need of specific groups are forgotten. So this kind of serious game was a really good way of identifying these needs. So we bring together elderly people, women, youth people, people with disabilities, and so on. And all the feedback collected from these users was used to fine-tune the measures. Well, then the hackathon series, we organized as well some hackathons in Rome, Oslo, Mannheim, and Valencia. And the idea of these hackathons was to bring together young innovators to really help us in the refinement or the implementation of some measures. So it was, this is the case of Valencia Hackathon. So it was really great to engage university students and young professionals and give them the opportunity to bring us fresh ideas and new perspectives. So each city focused on a specific challenge. And in case of Valencia, for example, the hackathon was used to really generate innovative ideas on how to make the bus stops more attractive, accessible, innovative, and even climate resilient. Then we had a set of thematic workshops. These are just a few examples because we have quite a lot. So during this 18-month, we have organized different thematic workshops. Some of them focus on the mobility, on the concept of the mobility as a right, on the public transport prioritization, strategies to drive a change in the user's behavior, and so on. So we use these workshops to share lessons learned among the pilot sites and also to exchange ideas on how to address a specific point of attention. So things that are usually forgotten when designing and implementing certain type of measures. For example, forgetting about certain type of user groups when designing a measure that can limit the impact of a measure. So that should be identified from the very beginning. Then we have cluster brain meetings. That means bilateral meetings between Living Labs and Twin Insight to exchange on ideas, challenges, and solutions. So these meetings were really useful to help cities that were facing similar transport and cultural issues to collaborate, share experiences, and really come up with better solutions. So far we have done 2 of these meetings between Rome and Lisbon and between Valencia and Thessaloniki, and it was really great to use these meetings to improve not only the Living Labs solution, but also the Twin Insight solutions. And then I'm almost finalizing these detailed plans and continuous monitoring. Well, we have supported also the cities in detailing really clear demonstration, implementation, and monitoring plans. And when I say really detailed plans, is that they are defining specific steps with specific timelines and so on. So this will really help us identify in advance in case there are any problems that will be identified in advance and in order to tackle the problem and keep the things on track. And for the last one, for the support toolkit, I will go to my last slide. So in Upper project, we have the 78 measures, but also the other second core component is that we are developing a toolkit composed by 7 technology-based innovative solutions that will help the cities in designing, simulating, monitoring, evaluating, maximizing the impact of their push and pull measures. So in a nutshell, this set of tools can support the measures along their entire life cycle. So very quickly, which are these tools? So for example, the second one, the UTwin, it's for the real-time monitoring and management of the mobility ecosystem. It's like a digital twin of the urban mobility and the public transport network. USIM, it has two modules, USIM Plan to support the transport planning through simulation, and USIM Live for real-time simulations and to support the decision-making. In case of USAM, it's mainly to track the sustainable mobility goals and the KPIs of the cities. UNI is to understand how the people move throughout the city and to identify which are the inefficiencies in the public transport network. UGO, to engage citizens in the mobility decisions and to foster collaboration in the design of this kind of measures. To share some knowledge and best practices in public transport. And finally, UTransfer, to support the cities in replicating their successful measures. And now I think it's already time to give the floor to the two insights from Upper, which are both them doing an excellent work. And it's Leuven and Budapest. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. And if you have any doubt, we'll have this question and answer time in just a few minutes. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Raquel. This was Upper in a nutshell, but Upper is much bigger than that, so it's difficult in 15 minutes, but I think you did a great job. So thank you very much for that, and you did an excellent transition to the next presentation, which will be the presentation from Budapest. So I will be sharing the screen. Okay, whenever you're ready, Julia. Yeah, I'll just switch this.
Thank you, Manon. Yes, and thank you. I would like to say, good morning, everyone, and hello. And I'd like to say thanks to Police Network for inviting us to this webinar and all our other colleagues and cities we are working together in Upper project. So my name is Julia, and I am working for BKK Center for Budapest Transport. BKK is the mobility manager of the city of Budapest, and it's responsible for the sustainable urban mobility planning. And as a part of this, to prepare a public transport network strategy for the city. We have compiled this presentation together with my colleague Agnes Imrefi, who is deeper involved in the technical details of this methodology. I will talk about in seconds. Next slide, please. So firstly, I would like to give you a brief introduction about the work we do at BKK that is related to public transport prioritization, and an overview of the public transportation numbers in Budapest. After that, I will show you different type of PT prioritization tools we are using in the streets of Budapest. Then I'll talk about our work within Upper project, how we used to, and how we assess now the effectiveness of these prior tools. Then I will show you how we plan to use the results of Upper project to develop the PT network strategy, and also in the future for selecting new locations or to assess selected locations. Next slide, please. This is just to show you the numbers of the daily public transport trips in Budapest PT network. So 2,300 vehicles depart daily. These are boarded by passengers approximately 3.3 million times on one average workday. Tram lines number 4 and 6 alone, the dominant yellow ring in the middle, you can see one of the busiest tram lines in Europe, provide for about 3,500,000 trips. We can see with blue color the bus lines, and this will be important for us now. So if we add up these blue lines together, the total daily passenger number we will get is 1.2 million. Next slide, please. This is another interesting graphic that is helping us to get an overview for the PT network planning strategy. So this shows us the zones in the city where the share of trips made by public transport are higher or lower. The darkest zones are those with a bigger share of PT use, and the lower one we can see with the lighter purple. These are the lower share of PT use. So we can see that the zones where the network gives good connections with high frequency service, mostly by the fixed track lines, there the modal share of PT will be higher. We can also see the important bus corridors by the blue as well. Next slide, please. Okay, let's say we have decided to prioritize the flow of public transport. For obvious reasons, it is a more sustainable way of transporting masses of people in a big city than by private car. In Budapest, we have this PT network and service, and each year we are conducting a comprehensive study about the user experience, where the travel time and the predictability are always on the top, compared to the importance of other quality KPIs describing the passenger perception of public transport. Next slide. I'd like to show you some of the many types of PT prioritization tools we are using. We can categorize them by their function, if it is a passive physical tool or it is active. Where active means that it can be controlled remotely based on actual flow of traffic. We can also categorize these tools by their location. They can affect only the traffic flow in a specific junction, or a tool can be used along more sections of a specific route. Then we say it has a linear prioritizing effect. Next one. I'll just show you an example for a specific tool. This one is the green light system that helps PT vehicles to reduce their actual travel times by an average of 30 seconds. There are 94 locations around the city where we use this tool. About how it works, there are also other locations. So similar to this work methodology, for example, I've just mentioned the lines number 4 and 6, the tram line in Budapest. We use also a linear help to speed up and to give priority for this important tram line. Next slide. BKK is working on 6 different measures, 3 of them supporting directly the work we do for the PT network strategy planning. And one of these 3 is this one I will talk about, dealing with the study of prioritizing PT services. BKK has already introduced various tools used to prioritize PT services, but has not yet had a uniform evaluation methodology. The effectiveness of PT flow prioritization tools are being monitored, but not in a comprehensive way, only on ad hoc base and based on a specific need or a problem. In case of a new intervention is about to be introduced at a new location, There is no documented guideline available to help to select the appropriate tool or to how to combine some of these tools. Next slide. Okay, the first objective was to be able to assess the effectiveness of these prio tools. For instance, to identify if there are sections in the bus lane network where the flow of PT traffic is significantly worse than it should be with an already implemented PT prio tool. We wanted to apply this assessment methodology for different type of prio tools, for example, different bus lanes, and also to have to find new locations and how to choose the best prio tools for these new locations. We wanted this tool to be data-based, and this gave us some challenges in the beginning because we wanted to work with data that is already directly available for BKK, but we were lucky because we have had the necessary data, so it was only the format that we have had some extra work with, and how to find a way to visualize that gives us a simple use interface and to analyze multiple PT lines and multiple sections, multiple time periods. Next slide. We can take a look at this timeline and the steps we had to take to prepare this methodology. First, we established a working group within BKK. Here I would like to mention that we have involved R&D unit, mobility development, strategy and public space regulations unit, mobility management, they who are responsible for PT operations and control management, and also a data science team that is a relatively young unit here at BKK. Then we have narrowed down the focus of this measure to only assess bus lanes. I will tell you why in the next slide. So then a pre-assessment phase started with selection of locations and PT lines, data collection and analysis. And there we could start to build up the assessment methodology. And after the pre-assessment, we have evaluated the results. And as a next step, we will identify points of intervention. For example, this intervention could be that a bus lane is not enough in itself, so we need to introduce extra interventions, maybe only traffic lights, programming, fine-tuning. And this brings us to the point where we can compile all the assessments and the findings to prepare the methodology, the documented methodology, and to repeat this timeline from step 3, but now already with the application of the complete methodology. So in the end, we will have as an outcome the methodology for assessing bus lanes effectiveness. I will get back to this to explain why only bus lanes. So the methodology will be used actually to optimize the internal workflow for assessment and planning. For existing locations, we already use implemented prio tools, and we will also count on the mobility management department, where they are daily working with the actual PT traffic, and they can see if somewhere is a problematic location, and we should take a closer look, and for also new locations. So PT line sections where it could use some prioritizations. There has not implemented yet any. So we are currently between step 5 and 6. We'll have by the end of January a more detailed view about the selected locations, and then we will be able to identify specific points of intervention where needed. Next slide. Now I would like to give you some details for each steps we took from where we have started. We started with a long list that included all these different types of prio tools. We have narrowed down the list for only the bus lanes, and we went on with only the bus lanes and different bus lane settings. Why? Because these were those tools where travel time assessment was the most relevant and where this type of assessment could provide visually informative answers about the effectiveness of these tools for the bus lanes. Next slide. This table served as a pre-assessment. I will not talk about this in details, but it was important that we could see together the delays and the positive delays. Positive delay means when a vehicle arrives to a stop ahead of schedule. So before we have started the work under upper, our mobility management department used similar tables for ad hoc monitoring purposes. Next slide. Now, this is a more user-friendly interface for the assessment we have come up with. And this is the first actual step of the final methodology. Here we can compare the scheduled and actual travel times based on hourly groupings for multiple hours. We can choose it from the upper menu. And these are here, for instance, the morning hours. You can see here in these hours, we can see that the actual travel times are nearly for each section longer than the scheduled. And we can jump to the next slide. This was the next step, iteration in this assessment. It shows us the comparison of delays of vehicles between stops for multiple completed rounds for hourly base and the percentage of all rounds to see what is the amount of delay or positive delay category and for what percentage of that particular hourly sample we have selected. I will show you some more better views which could be easily translated. Yes, we can jump to the next slide. So this is the last step of the visualization of the data. Here we have moved one more step ahead and tried to give a visual comparison about the accumulated delays for each sections between the stops. This would show us only from this one comparison a reliable visual result to start with when we would like to identify intervention points. The greener cells show us minimal accumulated delays and those that are somehow manageable through the route from maybe for the driver. But red cells show us bigger accumulated delays, the locations where we absolutely need to take a closer look. Yes. Okay, here we are to look at the future utilization of this methodology. This will definitely feed the PT network development strategy that has the ultimate goal of reaching the modal share objectives of Budapest with a cost-effective development of the PT network system and with better serving the user needs. In practice, as already mentioned, we will use this methodology for selecting new locations where we could and should prioritize PT flow and also to assess existing prior locations. When we would like to rank different selected locations, we would also take into account the volume of the PT traffic that is affected by the prioritization interventions. And next slide. This is a part of the PT network strategy, an assessment map about the actual travel times comparison between PT and private car in competition to reach the purple downtown area of Budapest. Currently, the green zones are the ones where PT is the winner, yellow where there is no significant difference, and the red and the dark red where private car takes over in the competition. Our aim is with time to recolor this map. So PT prior tools could bring significant recoloring, for example, in the traffic that comes in from the outer districts. Okay, the final slide. Okay, so that's it. Thank you once again for inviting us, and I will give back the floor to Manon. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Julia. I think it gives a good illustration of what is being done within the sites of the Upper project. And we're going to have a second illustration by the city of Leuven. So I will welcome Esther and Eli on stage. I will share your slides, right?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So we are Esther and Eli from the Mobility Department of the City of Leuven. And we will tell something more about one of our measures in the upper project about public transport. Yes, Manon. Okay. So our city has a completely redesigned bus network since the 6th of January. So it was implemented 10 days ago, fairly recent. Our city does not have its own bus operator. It's a regional operator for all of Flanders, which is called De Lijn. And they have the final responsibility for implementing the new bus network. But of course, we as a city also had a major role in this. So in this measure for the upper project, we contributed mainly to the preparation of the new bus network, but we will also monitor and evaluate it to see if the bus service and the user satisfaction actually improves in the city. Why did the bus network in Leuven change? Well, in 2019, the Flemish government changed its vision on mobility. So before it was more an overall PT or bus service throughout Flanders, providing everyone with the same bus service. And it's moving now, or it has moved to a more demand-driven public transport system. And actually, the main reason behind it was a more efficient use of resources. And so the entire Flemish bus network had to be adapted in line with this new vision. So for some parts of Flanders where there is less population, it means less buses and bus service on demand. But because of the intensive bus use in our city, it actually means a reinforcement of the bus service. And a second part of the revised mobility vision was that Flanders was divided into different transport regions, each with its own mobility plan for a more local approach and also with more involvement of the local authorities. So in the preparation phase, it involves a lot of alignment with the Lijn, so the bus operator, but also with main key stakeholders from the city to shape the final plan for the new network. The first draft was already dates from 2022. There were several feedback rounds with the stakeholders and the municipal college, which was fairly intensive the last year, and it led to the final version of the plan in January 2024, which was then approved by the City Council. We also provided citywide communication to complement the communication campaign of the Lijn itself. And then we also did the follow-up of the necessary infrastructural adjustments. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Mona. So now I'll briefly take you through the main principles of this new bus network. So before January, all of the buses went through the city center, causing a lot of traffic on the main road through the center. So in the new bus network, most of the regional lines run via the ring road, and only the city lines go through the center. This is to avoid the transfers on the short trips. And this should result in about 25% fewer buses on the main roads. But because not all of the buses go through the city center anymore, a smooth transfer is necessary. So before there was one transfer hub at the station of Leuven, there is now a second one at the other side of the city near the University Hospital, which with a 3 to 5 minute transfer to the city center. And with this new network, we also wanted high quality access to the main attraction poles of the city. So of course, the city center and the station, but also the university hospital. But then also some of the main industrial and office areas like IMEC and the university campus Arenberg. So for better accessibility of these important points, you can go to the next slide, Manu. The ring buses of Leuven run through a new ring route, which is in the shape of a mushroom, as you can see. So on this extended route, the infrastructure works, well, they have been done or they are still in progress to provide as much free passage as possible for the buses. Also on the main access roads to Leuven. So to give employees of these office areas, but also students of the university and patients of the hospital, a faster connection to these locations. And then also the city lines run longer, so most of them from 5 in the morning until midnight and also more frequently. And there is an increased service on Saturday for shopping. And Eli will tell you something more about the monitoring and evaluation part.
Yes, thank you. Right, so yeah, we are a bit in a special situation given that we have, of course, our public transport operator, but it's not the cities. It's a regional operator, like Esther said. They're also not part of the upper project. Most of the cities in the upper project, I think, have their operator and included, or even the operator is probably leading the demo. In our case, it's a bit different. Of course, we work together with them. We have similar goals in many ways, but still there are some differences. They are mainly focused on operational goals. They want to basically move as many people around, given their budget and their budget limits. While we of course also want as many as possible people using the bus, but we look at it from a bit more more high level, in the sense of we want a modal shift on the longer term. We want to create growth of public transport also in the longer term. We have our sustainable urban mobility plan. It's a bit of a different focus compared to their operational focus. So we, can you go back to the previous slide? Yes. So thanks to the upper project, we can do, next to the evaluation and the monitoring that our operator is doing themselves, we can do our own monitoring and our own evaluation, which is a good thing because of these differences in interests and goal. And the upper project, of course, has this general goal of increasing a modal share of public transport by 20%, increasing user satisfaction of public transport by 25%, if I'm correct. So we subscribe to that goals, definitely. And we are working on those goals, not only with this new bus network, but also with other measures. So we can't really evaluate all those measures separately. We are working on those goals in an integrated way. But the project allows us to do more more evaluation, more data collection, and to use the expertise and the tools from our partners in the project, which allows us to go beyond what we would normally be able to do in terms of evaluation. So next slide. What we are mainly focused on, given that our operator is evaluating the number of passengers, evaluating the travel times, is traffic going smoother, and so on. We are mostly focusing on the people using the bus service, on user satisfaction, and on this modal shift, but from let's say a higher or more high level perspective. And we're evaluating that mainly via surveys. And the project has allowed us to go about this in two ways, namely, on the one hand, street surveys, which are really fast, and we will do one fairly soon. And we have been, the network has been active for a week, so we are waiting a bit till everybody is used to the new network, but then we can start to do our, again, to do street surveys. They are fast, they are maybe not exactly representative, but they give a good idea about the immediate effects in the short term. And then we do larger scale surveys, which cost more money, of course, and which are a bit more, which involves a bit more work. We will do that in 2 years. So next slide. I just give you some idea about what we are talking about. User satisfaction for one. Here, this is the baselines that we have. Like, we do street surveys, we do the larger online city survey. They do not match entirely. That's an interesting fact on itself. Although the mean score is very close. It's, I think, 6.3 out of 10, which surely can be higher. So that's one goal, something that we will be monitoring. Another thing, this next slide, is question that we ask people, is a bus at all an attractive option for you to move around in Leuven? And what we really want is that this changes, because as you can see right now, it's only about 33% if you combine the people who say somewhat agree or completely agree. 33% who say, yes, bus is an option for me, or an attractive option for me to use. We want to grow this group. That's really the basis that we need for continuous and steady growth of public transport in the coming years, if not the coming decade. So this is also, for example, an important indicator for us, and that's what we are going to assess. Next to, of course, modal share and other indicators. And the challenges, that's something that Esther is going to talk about.
Yeah, so overall, the new bus network in Leuven should be an improvement, but of course there are also some challenges. There were challenges for us, for the city, for the implementation and the follow-up, but also on the long term. So as Eli and I already said, the operator is a regional bus operator. It's not from the city itself. So of course, we had a say in the shaping of the new network plan, and we also had to approve it, but we do not have complete control over the resources, the implementation, and so on. And also, for instance, for the user satisfaction, the land didn't want to share their data with us, so we had to conduct our own street surveys. But there's also a large bus driver shortage in the whole of Flanders, but mainly in the Leuven region, which has a major impact on the satisfaction on the bus service, especially concerning the reliability. And of course, this will not be solved by the new network. So in June, we are going to conduct another survey. That's our next step, and we are very curious about the results. It will be, of course, a couple of months after the implementation, so it will be maybe too soon to see any results, but we'll keep everyone in the upper project posted. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, can you hear me? Great. Thank you very much, Esther and Eli, for this great presentation. So now we will go into the Q&A session. I don't see currently questions in the chat, but I have a few questions for you. But I'll first start sharing my screen again with the background slides. All right. So yeah, on the presentation that we just had from Leuven, I was actually curious, when you talk about the satisfaction of users in terms of the bus, about the share of the bus in the transport in Leuven Do you know about what percent of the population actually uses the bus in Leuven?
Yeah, sure. I realize I didn't actually include the modal share in the presentation, but that's also because it's very difficult to give one number and say that this is the right number. But if you take the wider functional urban area and look at the modal share there, then we are about 15% with public transport. So that's that base number that you that might have missed in the presentation. So we want to increase that, sure, but we think it's more important to focus first on those direct indicators like how satisfied are the current users, how many people think, okay, I'm maybe not a regular user now, but bus could be a good option for me. We need to increase that first to get more people on the bus and to shift the needle on that modal share.
Very interesting, thank you. We have one question from the chat asking, why did the regional operator in Leuven not want to go through the city center?
It's not it was the demand from the city itself because there were a lot of complaints of too many buses on the main roads. It's also a main access road to a lot of the schools in the morning, a lot of cyclists, also children. So it's mainly a safety question. It was too much, mainly in the morning and the evening with all of the bicycles. Yeah.
It's also, if I may add, because we had this like unipolar system where you only have one hub basically, which made that almost all lines needed to go to the city center because most people need to be in the city center. Because people are used in Belgium and Leuven, we just take the bus one line, we don't get to another line, and now we want to change this mindset a bit and change to a more to make it normal to change buses at those two new hubs, let's say. So yeah, in a way it's more difficult now because not all lines will go to the city center, so you will need to take a bus, but we hope that this, thanks to the high frequency and the hopefully smooth interchanges, that this will work, and this will mean less buses to the city center, which is good for safety and
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question about on-demand buses in Leuven and whether they are part of the way you have thought about the new bus network and how you communicated the changes to the bus network to the population.
In Leuven, there are no, in the Leuven region, there are no on-demand buses because it's a city and we have enough passengers. So we kept all of our service. Some of the areas that are more outside of the city have a lower frequency or lesser buses, but there is no on demand, like in some parts of Flanders where people really have to ask for a bus through the application. So that doesn't exist in Leuven itself. I'm sorry, there were the second question. I forgot. I had the communication.
The changes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so actually the main communication was through the line itself, but we support it with communication in our city magazine. We distributed flyers with the changes to all of our citizens, also social media campaign and on some of the main screens in the city. But also the PT operator itself was responsible for all of the signage at the bus stops itself, for instance, and communication on the buses.
Okay, thank you very much. Now there's a question for Budapest, which says, Budapest's map comparing time efficiency of public transport versus car looks really impressive. Do you think that this matches public perception? And could this data be used as marketing for public transport?
Nice questions. Thank you for that. I guess the public perception differs a bit from this one picture. I don't know whether we have shared it to public or only in experts, but for experts, and I will drop this question to the owner of these nice graphics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. And I have to actually a follow-up question on this. As you saw in your first slide, public transport is covering the center of the city much more than the rest of the city. And you're improving the public transport service with the prioritization of public transport vehicles. But have you also considered expanding the network of the public transport in Budapest?
Yes, the PT network strategy is also about expanding the network. So, and making to, so first to assess where are those needs which are not yet met with some network of the public transport. And these can be also connections like tangential connections. We are also making an assessment via upper. This is another. This is under another upper measure, which is quite an interesting one because we haven't heard about similar assessments in other cities. And so the tangential connections would mean that the connections that are not, the trips that are not directed toward the city center, but connects in suburban districts, starts in an suburban districts and directs to another suburban, the neighboring suburban districts of Budapest. So we are, yes, thinking about, and this is a very part of the PT network planning strategy to expand the network within, first within the borders of Budapest. So as you can see, if we can jump back to that slide that shows us where we also need to, there's a lot of districts and a lot of zones in Budapest where we can, yes, improve a lot the connections and maybe the PT share.
Which is the slide that you meant in the beginning?
Purple, yes, this is the purple zones.
Yes.
This is also relevant for the questions. I don't know if I have answered the question.
Yeah, on my side, yes. And I think it's actually a good transition to another question that is in the chat, wondering about whether the city is handled as its own unit or how can the rural areas within the metropolitan region profit also from the measures that you are adopting and the improvement that you're doing of the public transport network?
We can take a look at maybe the last graphics where we can see also the challenge, the competition between private cars and PT, where we can see also the agglomeration area, some zones from the agglomeration area where a lot of traffic comes into directs toward the city center. And there we have some lines, some bus lines where we can use on a longer run bus lanes. And this is a very, very important area to everywhere to speed up the PT traffic that comes from the outside of Budapest. So not specifically answering the question, but we can consider also the agglomeration area as a benefiting part.
And are you in cooperation there with a regional authority? Because I guess your responsibility is more for Budapest city center, right?
The measure is now only concentrating in Budapest, and we use data available for BKK. But the PT network strategy, yes, considers and builds upon discussions and co-working with the area around Budapest.
All right. I think it's, yeah, Eli has raised hand. Eli, please.
Yeah, just want to add from our perspective, because yeah, we look at it from a very different city, of course, in terms of size, Leuven versus Budapest. But anyway, we look at it from a city perspective, but the surrounding areas are also profiting to a certain extent, but it's also a bit of a change in mindset, as we said, because we are now the new network means higher frequencies, more buses, but only on the main connections. And we are coming from, we have a lot of bus lines, basically trying to connect everybody. And since Flanders has not such a good zoning history, we have people living everywhere basically. That's a really big challenge on public transport systems. So now we are changing that, and we're going to higher frequency, faster connections, but only on the main line. So people need to travel. The first mile part of their trip, let's say, becomes longer. So that's a bit of a change, and there's a lot of resistance. But maybe in the end, I mean, that's what needs to be evaluated. Of course, it will mean a more sustainable and bus system. That's our story.
And I think it's great that you talk about this, because there's another question in the chat now asking if Leuven is considered as a self-sustaining urban area or a feeder city to Brussels. Like, what is your connection with the city of Brussels, and is there
Well,
more global functionality?
it's both. Basically, if you look at, especially from an European perspective, Leuven is completely within the functional urban area of Brussels, and of course we have an important connection with Brussels. But in the Flemish context, we also look at the Leuven functional urban area, and it's not in contradiction. We can be both. I think Leuven has an important central function for the surrounding areas, but then itself, the complete area is also part of the bigger, larger Brussels area, which makes it a complex situation, of course, in terms of public transport and mobility connections in general.
Thank you. Yes, because a lot of different stakeholders have to be involved in the design of public transport strategies, etc.
Yes,
actually,
And different governments, yes.
exactly, especially in Belgium, it's a huge challenge. I actually had a question related to that to Raquel. Have you seen in the upper project that collaboration between different types of stakeholders is one of the main difficulties in improving public transport services and implementing the measures of the project, or what are the most difficult parts of the upper project?
I would say that this is one of the barriers that is sometimes faced. So the collaboration between different stakeholders when they need to define measures that at the end will improve the user experience and so on in the public transport. Sometimes you need to bring together different stakeholders, different public transport operators, especially if you are focusing, for example, in multimodality, that requires the collaboration between different stakeholders, and sometimes it's not easy. It also depends on the priorities of each one of these stakeholders. So to find an agreement is sometimes one of the first blockers. But at the end, the cities, the regions need to put the user in the center. The citizens, the visitors are the final users, so they will benefit from all these measures, but they should also be at the very beginning. So they should be the starting point and the final point. So you need to put the user in the first point. You need to understand which are their needs, which are their complaints, why are they not satisfied, or why are they not using the public transport, and this should be the starting point for them defining the measures. And sometimes this is forgotten, and sometimes when defining measures, the cities, for example, use surveys that are done for the PT users, but do not focus on the non-PT users. And sometimes this should be one of the main focus from the very beginning. So from my point of view, to overcome these first barriers, all the stakeholders need to really understand which are their needs, need to take decisions also based on data, And all this information will be really useful to then prioritize the measures, prioritize the investments, and then decide what is going to be best for the end user instead of your own interest.
Yes, thank you very much. I also think that this is very important when you design a public transport strategy to also think of people who are not using public transport. And I actually had a question to Budapest about this, because we see that the public transport prioritizing measure that you're planning, the 5 main locations, or in the city center, where there is a lot of traffic, and I guess also a lot of car traffic. So I was wondering if you expect any complaints by other road users, and how would you deal with that?
Okay, thanks for the questions. Yes, indeed, these top 5 locations all have significant PT traffic volume, and these are also frequented locations in terms of other road traffic. So the answer to the question is a bit more complex. On the one hand, if we want to introduce a more significant PT prioritization tool in a completely new location, we would start it with a data-based temporary pilot operation and communicate about it in advance to the road users. We would monitor the traffic. So after the pilot period, we can say, based on data, whether it achieves the desired effect at a given location, whether it helps PT flow as planned, and whether the potential diversion of road traffic will not cause a greater congestion on surrounding routes. We have the tools and the practice for all of this. Okay. On the other hand, in the case of routes and connections that already use tools that prioritize public transport, we would definitely carry on with the testing of this methodology, and if the efficiency could be improved at some of these locations, it would probably require less financial resources and would not have a significant impact on the other road traffic. So these would probably be minor fine-tunings, while this could win PT flow minutes. So of course, this would involve an extra traffic order change. Then we will publish the information in advance in a timely manner. By the way, we can say that there has been a good example recently that if we introduce systematic database changes on certain road sections, not everywhere at once, but in a nice sequence, location by location, for example, reducing the maximum permitted speed for traffic safety purposes. And we go public about it in an appropriate, timely manner with well-structured communication, then the resistance to this can be minimized. So this is the experience we have now.
Thank you very much. So yeah, communication to all the stakeholders, but also an exhaustive, comprehensive assessment of the potential impacts of the measures that you want to implement. We have another question from the chat for both Budapest and Leuven, asking whether gender-based data was used to examine the needs of females and the impact of public transport changes. I don't know who wants to start.
Van bontásunk, hogy nők és férfiak? Aha, gender means. I guess we don't have this kind of share, so gender-based share of the users for this. I mean, for user experience, we collect this data, but that does not include the data we are working with for these measures.
Okay, so not especially in the upper projects. What about Leuven?
Well, we don't have all of the data, of course, because we only have the data from our street surveys, and we did compare the results, but there was no significant difference for women. So,
in our larger surveys, we also have gender. And also that should be representative for gender, but yeah, we haven't looked into that yet. Maybe some interesting patterns come out of that, but we haven't analyzed that as of yet.
Okay, thank you very much. While you're speaking, Leuven, I had another question because we were talking about potential complaints by other road users. And in Leuven, I know that the bicycle network is very extended and there are a lot of cyclists. You mentioned them. Do you expect any conflict between the new bus network and the cyclists, or have they been taken into consideration or involved into the preparation process of the new bus system?
They are being taken well, we take them into consideration always, but I don't think there is a change between the old bus network and the new network. There are a lot of cyclists that will be the same, and it's well, the network itself for the buses changed, the lines, how they ride change, but I don't think in general the amount of buses is more in Leuven than before. But it's difficult, yes.
It's like we said earlier, the decision to have less buses in the city center is, I think, to a certain extent, to improve the safety of cyclists, but also we have this, in principle, on roads where bus lines are present, these roads get right of way for towards other roads, also towards cyclists. And in the city center, this often clashes because we also have there this idea about the city center is basically a large cycling zone. But so these main bus routes, clash with that. So by simplifying and reducing the numbers of buses in the city center and also simplifying the network a bit to a certain extent, we might reduce those clashes a bit. But of course, it's still, it's they need to to live together on the same streets. Of course, that will always be the case. So yeah.
And it already was so before the new network. So
Yes. Yeah, I guess this conflict has always been existing in Leuven because of the amount
yes.
of cyclists.
But maybe another point to that is that we don't, in terms of evaluating, is that we don't really want to attract people who are now using active modes, cycling, and get them on the bus. I mean, they can, of course, but that's not the goal. So that's also a reason to monitor and evaluate in more detail than just counting people on the buses. Yeah, we don't want to eat the share of active modes. We want to eat the share of car travel. So that's also an important point to note and to monitor in the coming months and years.
Yes, that's part of the new paradigm of public transport that I was mentioning in introduction as well, that public transport is not exclusively buses, etc., but it also covers the active modes and everything that is good for public mobility in general. All right, I have one last question for Raquel, and then we can go on with the rest of the presentations. And it actually links to the next presentation because it's about the legacy of the Upper project. A lot of work is being done in the Upper project and a lot of knowledge is produced. Also, the tools that you mentioned, the 7 Upper tools, are they going to be available beyond the project lifetime? And how is that going to impact public transport after Upper?
Okay, yeah, it has a lot to do with the following presentation because at the end, well, in Upper we are implementing 78 measures. So this generates a lot of content with experiences, bad experiences, lessons learned, guidelines, and so on. So in order not to lose this content, but also what we would like to avoid is having all that information inside the Upper project. We want to open this content to everyone, to every city, region, public transport operator that wants to learn from our experiences. We want to open this content. So this is why we have created these 2 platforms that will be combined into one, YouKnow and YouTransfer, one more focused on the knowledge exchange during the project lifetime to really exchange on knowledge, best practices, up-to-date information, innovations. So everything that is being tested in the Upper project, and then YouTransfer more focus on replicating this kind of measures in other cities, in other regions. So all this content will be openly available for everyone, everyone in Europe. And regarding the upper tools, the ones that are more technical, these are being tested by they have been offered to the 10 sites. So they are able to test them during the project lifetime. Part of them are really technical, require a software deployment in the city, in the public transport operator. So in case these cities, after the end of the project, are interested in continue with the use of these tools, we will define the strategy to continue the collaboration. But for sure, these tools will reach a high level of TRL, so they will be ready to be exploited by these cities once the project is over.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So this also answers the first question that was asked in the chat about Irish cities. We currently don't have Irish cities involved within Upper, but Irish cities would definitely be able to use the tools that would be developed within the project. Okay, thank you very much to our panelists, and we'll now go to the last presentation that we have in this webinar by Laura Babio about Upper Legacy for Lasting Public Transport Improvement. Laura, you said you want to share your slides, right?
Yeah, I think you can already see them. Can you confirm?
Yes, we can.
Yes, perfect. Hi everyone. We just have one last very short presentation before we free you. As Manon said, my name is Laura. I work also at Polis and with Manon and also in the Upper project. I'm gonna be quickly introducing one of the 7 tools that we are developing within the project. I'm not gonna expand on the others. Raquel just did a beautiful summary of what we're doing. In essence, we, together with all the push and pull measures that the cities are implementing, we are developing 7 tools aiming to complement the measures and to maximize their impact and to ensure that we have citizen participation, that we understand the behaviors, knowledge transfer, scalability, and uptake of replicable solutions. I'm just focusing on, the one that Polis is leading on. In a nutshell, is an online platform solely focused on public transport, or rather with public transport at the center, focusing on exchanging knowledge, but also enhancing collaboration and promoting innovation. And we consider that fills a gap because there is no such dedicated portal for public transport knowledge in Europe. And what we do with it is we consolidate resources, existing resources, best practices, and innovation in one accessible online platform. Is targeting almost everyone. We, of course, focus on cities, public transport operators, authorities, policymakers, urban planners, researchers, and general transport professionals, or anyone that is directly related to public transport. But we are also designing it in a way that the resources also address the general public, which we want to get on board of the public transport revolution. So we're trying to encourage broader awareness and participation in public transport. Is the content that you will find in the platform, even though it's not only sourced from within Upper, is prepared by the Upper Consortium. And we cite and reference numerous external sources, as well, of course, as our own Upper results. This is what the platform looks like for now. We are still finalizing the last touches, and we are preparing to launch it soon, and it will be publicly accessible at this link. You can try go now, but you won't see anything yet, as we won't open it until we officially launch it. And as a user, you will be able to experience the platform in different ways. Obviously, by arriving at the landing page, you will get a clear overview of what you will find there, and you will get a direct link to the different features and to the different sections that the tools offers. You will also be able to search based on keywords, on topics related to public transport, and be able to explore and quickly discover new content that might be relevant for your work, or just because you're a curious person. That also works. And you will also be able to filter by topic again, but also by country or by content type. one of the key features that we are preparing for the public and for those that maybe are not so deep into the topic of public transport is a state-of-the-art glossary on public transport topics and key terminology that might facilitate getting into the topic. And of course, we will have just the regular frequently asked questions section for everyone that needs just a bit guidance to get into the platform. And what's more interesting for you as external stakeholders to the Upper project is that we will have a feature too that will allow you to suggest new content. So if you are working on things that might be relevant topic-wise, very good resources, you will also be able to provide some content for, we want it to be open and not only for the Upper partners and participants. Just very briefly, the type of resources that you will find, the big part of the tool are guidance framework, results from other research and innovation projects, European and beyond, academic research, tools, including features of the Upper tools. You will find there some extra guidance if you want to know a bit more what the other Upper tools are doing, case studies, inventories, policy briefs, and they will all touch on a different variety of topics. As I said, we focus on public transport, but we also talk about complementary measures to public transport, like urban vehicle access regulations or measures to enhance active mobility. The key is just that public transport is the backbone, but we don't ignore all the other facets of mobility. We organize it around the 5 thematic areas in Upper that you can see at the bottom. But as I said, you will also find the specific topics that will allow you to filter the content and just navigate it easily. And as I mentioned before, we have a suggest content feature. So just as you would apply for a conference with a paper or some new results that you have been working with, you will do the same for the platform. We wanted to have a 2-step process so we can ensure that we have good quality, impact-driven content in our site. But this shouldn't deter you from joining, because as long as you keep within topic and you have interesting results to share, then you will most likely be accepted to join our platform. And we are looking forward to it. We want to extend an invitation officially now, but you will also see it if you pay attention to our social media channels and to our website, where we will announce the launch and where we will expect to have regular calls for content. So you can always participate in, at any point after the launch. So for now, what's next for us? We are really working hard to put up some useful resources and to finalize the features, the glossary. As I said, it takes a little bit of time. And then once we launch it, the work doesn't stop with the launch. We will keep working on it. We hope to include in the future sections like networking and connect with other knowledge sharing initiatives that can feed each other. So if you have really any ideas, if you already want to collaborate, if you already have materials that you would like to be published in such a platform, please do not hesitate to reach out. You have here my email address. You can contact me directly. And don't forget to follow our social media channels and website so you can really be the first user once we launch it publicly. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura. That was efficient, and we really hope to receive contributions from a lot of participants to this webinar. Okay, we're coming to an end of this webinar, sorry. So I'll just share again for the conclusion very briefly. Wrap up of this session is that public transport improvement requires collaboration of multiple stakeholders. They were mentioned by our speakers. It is also conditioned by integration into local transport ecosystem, as we saw. And yeah, in 2026, we will have demonstrations of the Upper measures. So wait for them. And in the meantime, you can always check the existing outputs of the project on the project website that you can find through the QR code that is now on the slides. So scan it very quickly because I'm going to switch to the next slides. All right, you can always go to Upper on Google and you will find everything. So just as a reminder that this is the second webinar of the Public Transport Lab webinar series of Polis, and that the next one will be on January 27 about autonomous vehicles. So that's it. Thank you very much for your attention and for joining this webinar. We hope you found it fruitful. Don't hesitate to reach out to get involved into the upcoming activities. And yeah, see you next time. Thank you very much to the panelists as well for your great presentation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.